Do me a favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this from one of the digital platforms, if you're listening to this from one of the digital platforms, please make sure you leave a comment. Please make sure you leave a comment, leave a review, like it, subscribe, or I'm sorry, like it, subscribe, download the episode, but make sure you leave a comment, leave a review. You know what I mean? So let's go. Now, topic of the day, right? And I've talked about this type of thing before in my notes. Hold on one second. No, man. No, I'm be able to get my notes. It's all good. I'll go off the top. Now, I've talked about this type of thing before, but we have to continue to get the best understanding possible, right? Because hip hop is a large part of the black community. Like since the 70s, it has been a large part of our existence, right? It's been a large part of how we communicate with each other. It's just been a large part of our culture, right? And I, for one, am a complete lover of hip hop. I'm 40 years old. I'm probably going to be listening to hip hop until I'm an old man, right? But we need to be clear on some of the dysfunctions of this culture, right? Because when we look at hip hop today, it's been this way for a while. Elements of this have been here for a while, but we need to be clear on how our children process and receive this information, right? Because if you are a black child who come from an underserved community, if you're a black child who come from an underserved community that outside of your house, you see a lot of gang banging, you see a lot of drug dealing, maybe your home doesn't have resources, right? And then you listen to this music that kind of plays into some of these ways of living, you can get caught up in that shit. You can begin to listen to the rappers and think that's the correct way to live. You know what I mean? And again, even though I love hip hop, even though, like I said, I'm gonna continue to listen to hip hop, I have 5 children, and what I did for my children early on, when I realized that they love the art form, I did my due diligence and made sure I educated them on the root of hip hop and how this form of music came out of struggle. Like this form of music came out of us not having, you know, in the Bronx where this was started, this came out of underserved community that was in shambles. And these Jamaican brothers took these speakers and took this form of music just to create a positive energy in the people. You know what I mean? And that transcended to a lot of hip hop artists that was really just reporting on what they seen in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? Now, as things continued, it continued in that direction, but it also took a left turn when we got artists like Snoop and Dre and these guys that I love, but bringing the gangsterism into music kind of ruined hip hop to a degree. Now, I understand I'm old enough to contextualize what I'm looking at and see a young brother who is reporting on where he come from, right? He's reporting on what he see in his neighborhood. But this is a slippery slope when you report this as a glorification mechanism, or if you report this as you being an active participant, right? Some kids don't know how to distinguish what's true and what's false. Now, like I always say, if you're a young hip hop artist who had to sell dope to survive, or had to do negative shit in the street to survive, just like they say in church, if this is your testimony, I can't knock that, right? If this is your testimony, I'm all about truth and honesty. If this is your testimony, I can't knock that. And as a parent, if there is young men out there giving their testimony about what they've been through and the type of life they've had to live, I think it's on us to check that shit at the door if we don't think it's something that can be beneficial for our young people. You know what I mean? Because we have too many young dudes, especially in the city I'm in. I'm in Sacramento, California. We have shootings often with young men in our communities. And I'm not going to lie and say there isn't a small connection between their activity in the actual music that they was listening to. Now, before I got on with you guys tonight, I was reading some articles about the connection between hip hop and violence and the statistics with young people who listen to hip hop and how they turn out. And I was going to read some of the articles, but I opted not to because I know a lot of the information they were giving me, and some of these articles were written by people outside of our community. So they're not really reporting on these things honestly. If you haven't been in our community and experienced how some of these things transpire, you really don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You know what I mean? Some of the statistics were speaking to the fact that, and I'll paraphrase here, was speaking to the fact that young black girls between a certain age who listen to hip hop music are more likely to be get pregnant, more likely to be violent, more likely to hit their teacher, and all these different things, right? But in 3 or 4 articles I read, right, and this is kind of how they try to do us, because numbers don't lie at times, but they can be misleading because they didn't do the contrast with white kids who were raised in two-parent homes in the suburb. White girls who were raised in two-parent homes in the suburbs, are they doing these same type of things? Well, no, they're not, because to me, it's based on environment. Just like I started off saying with this topic, and again, if you're just tuning in, we are talking about how hip hop affects our youth. Like, is hip hop the cause of the violence in our community? Is hip hop the cause of the dysfunctions in our community, right? Now, this article was mentioning black girls, but it did nothing to mention how well-to-do white kids are the primary purchaser of hip-hop music. Now, are they in gangs? Are they hitting their teacher and doing all this foul shit? No, because context is needed. The majority of our kids who are doing this, who are exhibiting this type of behavior, are children who come from dysfunctional environments. The environment is the key in all of this to me. And I'm going to be honest. Like I said, father of 5, my 4 older children who did not live with me, but would come to visit me, visitation, all these things. Like, I have a relationship with them. But if I could go back, I would treat hip hop, I would treat their exposure to hip hop a little bit differently. Only because some of the choices that they made later on in life, in my opinion, was based on the soundtrack they had, which was the music, and the environment that they was raised in. Just like I was telling you guys, if a young person has to be raised in an underserved community, and let's say they do not have 2 strong parents in the household, you need to think hard about how you expose them to hip hop. Just allowing, what's going on? Just allowing your 10 or 11-year-old child to consume hip hop when you're a single mom, or you're in an environment where it's not stable, and you're in the outside environment has a lot of the elements that the music speak about, that's an irresponsible act. Family, that's an irresponsible act. The first thing all of us should do, if we are going to allow our children to listen to hip hop or rap, whatever you want to call it, because some of these young dudes, I don't hate on them, because if you're making money and figuring out a way to get your family out of poverty, there's no way I can hate on that, because you could be doing something negative, right? But at the end of the day, if you're glorifying shooting other young black men, if you're glorifying taking drugs or using drugs, I have a problem with that if it's not put in context. But it's a lot of people to blame for for these elements, family. Like, these record companies take advantage of these young men, and they make sure if we have a Talib Kweli type of MC, he don't get the same type of love in a record company as a Lil Xan or a Lil Pump or any of these young dudes. Not to name anybody specifically, but any of these young dudes who glorify dysfunction, they don't get the same type of love. You know what I mean? So I think as parents, just like I did with my children, I think you should go back and teach them about the beginning of hip hop. Teach them about the different elements of hip hop, the graffiti, the breakdancing, the DJing. Like, it trips me out how, and I don't appreciate this, right? Like, I don't respect this at all. Even though I don't knock these young men for finding a way to make money, I understand that the music sounds different from when I was young. My children enjoy it. I don't as much, but I can respect some of these young men from getting out of these situations. But if they don't, some of these young men, you'll ask them, do you know Tupac? Do you know any, you know what I mean? They'll go back and speak about older people from hip hop and see if they know them, and they don't. And even worse, some of them act like they don't even give a fuck, right? Some of them act like it's no need to. And I'm thinking in my mind, what industry can you enter into where learning about the history of this industry is null and void? Like, that's some stupid shit. So, yes, the record companies should be held accountable. These young men should be held accountable. But nobody makes your children listen to hip hop. Like, that's a choice that you're making. You know what I mean? So if you want to solve that problem, give them context. Give them context because I see a lot of young men in my community. I know this is happening everywhere in the country, but a lot of men in my community, 16, 17-year-old rappers killing each other, shooting at each other. Like the availability of guns at this day and time, the amount of young men who don't even think about fighting is tremendous at this point. And we can't let hip hop off the hook. And I battle with this because, like I said, I love the genre. I love the art form. But at this point, we need to be like contextual about all of this. There's enough hip hop out there where you don't even really have to listen to the shoot 'em up bang bang shit, right? And it's beginning to mature because the hip hop artists that I listen to who are 30 something and over, a lot of these dudes were speaking like this when they were younger, right? But this speaks to how society doesn't allow black men to grow. White kids can fuck up at 15 and 16. They call them kids, treat them like a kid until they become older. A 17-year-old black boy gets treated like an adult at 17. We look at the T.I.s. We look at the Snoop Dogs. These are dudes who was on some gangster thug shit as young people, but they grew out of it. They grew out of it to be productive members of society who we see smiling all the time, who we see happy, taking care of their family. That's how that shit supposed to go. And then their music reflects that, right? Their music has sentiments of violence, but it's all in context now. Like it's not just aimless shit looking to hurt somebody. It's based on where they are in their life. And that's how most hip hop artists will get, I think, if we allow them to grow. But society doesn't necessarily do that because we can't act like there isn't a connection between how these young men speak. I was just talking about Bobby Smurder, who was speaking a certain way in his music, carrying himself a certain way in his music, and the police departments around him felt like, okay, we gonna get him, right? You got 20, 30 guys around you, but they take the aim at you. We've seen this several times and time again. When Lil Wayne got arrested, they went on his bus and asked, it was one gun on the bus, two guns on the bus. You don't have the gun on nobody, right? Nobody's holding it. They asked, who's Lil Wayne? Pointed him out, okay, I'm bringing you to jail. You see what I'm saying? So we're targeted by authorities whether we rap or not. They just use the hip hop as an excuse, right? Right? They use the hip hop as an excuse, but at the end of the day, as you get older, the content should start to bother you a little bit. You know what I mean? If you listen to a young dude who's talking about senselessly hurting somebody, talking about pimping women, like I have to be honest, this type of music used to be my shit when I was younger. But as I get older, I don't got daughters, but I got granddaughters. I'm like, damn, what if a dude was talking about pimping my granddaughter? We talk about all these instances where black girls is missing. We got to keep it real. Sometimes she would pimp him, like they say. She didn't went off with some young dude who think he a goddamn pimp. You know what I mean? These are dysfunctions in our community that we kind of need to be aware of and talk about. Like you shouldn't be a 40-something-year-old man saying not condemning certain parts of hip hop to a degree. That shouldn't happen at all. You know what I mean? Because at this point, this is the most popular form of music in American culture. So it's going to be capitalized off by, excuse me, family, these record companies are going to capitalize off of these young men's dysfunction. Even looking far back 25 years ago at the Biggie and Tupac incident, right? Media outlets at that time sensationalized that beef. I'm not saying they were the cause of what actually happened to those two brothers, but they definitely sensationalized. They played a role in how that whole thing played out, right? So now we're not just dealing with young men coming from the hood speaking a certain way, but we got these companies return to actually capitalize off of our misfortune, capitalize off of their life stories, right? And another thing, one thing I never will respect, if you are a young rapper, if you know a young rapper, or if I find out a young rapper is just completely lying in his lyrics, I don't appreciate that shit at all. Because again, if you're gonna narrate what you've been through in your life, the real experiences of your life, nobody can take that away from you, family. Nobody can take that away from you. But if you're making up shit just to sell records, you need to be banned. If you're making up shit just to get to a certain place, just to make money, then you ain't shit. You know what I mean? That type of behavior has no place in our society. You know what I mean? And we're dealing with the flip of the mentality. When I was 16, 17, 18, 19, the rapper was the drug dealer. Still bad. I'm not glorifying this way of living, but again, a lot of this is connected to white supremacy. If we're going to be honest, the crack in our neighborhoods, we didn't go get this shit. This shit was dropped off in our neighborhoods, and we just took to it because of the dysfunctions in our household, starving, not having food, being in a struggle type of environment will make you do certain things. So a lot of these guys was just rapping about the fact that, hey man, look, my mom don't work. My mom ain't capable of working. Maybe she on drugs too. The dudes right outside of my house got brand new shoes. They got the clothes they want. They eat whatever they want. They trying to take care of me, and my stomach is growling. Anybody would do that in that situation. You know what I mean? Now, in my opinion, we got the babies of the drug dealers. We have the babies of the crack era, right? Which produced single parent homes, which the war on drugs and the prison to the school to prison pipeline, all of these things are real, right? So we got young kids now rapping about being on drugs because they coming from broken homes. They coming from an environment where their brothers, their uncles, their dads are in jail right now with these bullshit ass 3 strikes laws, right? So there's a direct connection between the hip hop we listen to in the racism and the systematic injustice that we had to face, right? So this is what you should be talking to your kids about. If you want them to listen to this music, you gotta provide context. If you don't, they gonna follow some bullshit and probably end up doing some bullshit. You feel me? So life should always be about knowing better, you know better, you gotta do better, family. And that's for all of us. You know what I mean? So I'm not telling anybody what to do in their household, but you have to create understandings in your house. And like I always say, your house is like a small city, like a small country. You create all the rules and regulations in this house, and your kids bring this to the outside world. Like most children are just the products of their home first, then their environment. So if we took the time to educate our kids on everything we view important, everything they want to be involved in, because just telling them, no, you can't listen to this, give it to me, well, that's going to make them want it more. And they'll just wait till they get to school. They'll just wait till they get around a friend. You see what I'm saying? And this goes with everything. I'm talking about hip hop right now, but this is about drugs. This is about sex. I talk to my kids about all of this shit. You have to talk to them about it openly and honestly. Of course, based on their age, you scale things down a bit. But this world is fucked up, y'all. It's a lot of stuff going on out here with social media and the access they have to anything. You can't shy away from stuff. You can't ignore stuff and act like it's going to go away, right? And I'm tired of seeing young men who pull up on me and they listen to this music, and their persona and everything I view about them is exhibiting everything from the music, right? To their pants being down to their goddamn knees. That's something you can curb, parents, right? You see your son walking out the house with his pants down to his goddamn knees, you need to pull him back in the house. Like, discipline needs to be something we institute. Even though we've been through all this shit with this system, we should go even harder because of this. We should go even harder to make sure a dad's in the house. We should go even harder to make sure we have the necessary resources so they won't want to do anything foul. You know what I mean? And all of this starts with how we procreate. Yeah, the system has put us in a bind. It has helped create these single parent homes, and this welfare system has kind of backfired on us. Like, it's a lot of indifferences in structural things that we deal with, but we still have a say-so in this. Like I always say, we still have a say-so in this, parents. You can pull your kid to the side and talk to them as much as you need to. You can make sure your kids are in environments that don't breed certain activity. Because like I was saying earlier about the hip hop, this bullshit ass statistics I was reading about how we are so dysfunctional after listening to hip hop, but white kids are not. They made sure to leave that out. White kids are not. And why is that? Their level of resources in their environment does not breed this type of this type of shit. So because we know our environments breed these type of things, we have to be even more on it. Like we have to be even more in tune, right? Because if you don't, you're gonna have your son or daughter exhibiting the same behavior from this music. Like even the female artists, like we have a rash right now, family. And again, if these sisters is able to feed their families and come out of certain environments, I salute them. But the Megan Thee Stallions and the Cardi B's, the Grammys, they pretty much fucking each other on stage. I mean, if you got a little girl, this is alarming. You gotta maneuver about how you talk about that and how you present that to her, because this is basically stripper music. Even though, again, I always give credit to somebody who's been able to come from nothing and build themselves up. And Megan Thee Stallion, just on some real shit, beyond her content, I like her style of rapping. I like her cadence. I like her voice. I just don't fuck with the content as much. You know what I mean? But if I had a little girl, 8, 9 years old, I'm not sure how much of those females I would allow my daughter to listen to, because this is almost like embracing stripper culture to a degree. And again, I'm as hard on the men as I am on them, because they speak openly about sexual shit when the men do the same thing. So you can't come down too hard on them sisters when we allow a dude to say bitches ain't shit. You know what I mean? If they get on the mic and say, yeah, eat my pussy, whatever. I mean, shit. How can we be mad at them when the misogyny in the male hip hop has been running rampant for years? You know what I mean? So thank everybody for tuning in. Telling anybody what to do with their kids, but we have to be contextual when we allow them to do certain things. They're exposed to too much these days, right? So going through your kid's phone, having conversations about what they like, giving your kid the aux cord and say, play whatever you want, is an eye-opening experience, family. You should know exactly who your kid's favorite rappers is, without judgment. Now, if they put the shit on and you start judging it, they ain't gonna want to do it no more. Put it on. Ask them why they like that guy. Let the music play. Like whatever they're saying, let them say it. Ask them why they like that guy. Ask them what they see in that. Ask them what they think the dude is saying that's negative, or the female that's saying that's negative, right? This is what I do with my 14-year-old son. This will give you an understanding of why they listen to the music, what's their mind state behind it, right? All kids are different. Some kids are actually followers, and you know what kind of child you got. If you got a kid that's a little follower, that's gonna do whatever his friends do, that's gonna do whatever he see, maybe you should kind of wing back the hip hop from him. Maybe you should go even harder on educating this kid on where the music comes from and making sure you instill certain levels of confidence in them so they ain't got to follow nobody. You know what I mean? Because this parenting shit is hard, and we not going to act like it's not more difficult for black people. Like, real shit. We're not going to act like our communities breed certain type of children or certain type of people that we have to monitor. You know what I mean? So talking about the system, talking about the parenting, you got to combine all that shit in one. It's a mixture of, it's a gambit of things that's created who we are today. You know what I mean? So it's important that we talk about this shit, family. So please do me a favor, man. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Melanated Fathers YouTube channel, Melanated Fathers TV on YouTube, Melanated Fathers TV on YouTube. Every Monday I'm going to come back. Every Monday we come back, we talk about black businesses, we talk about important things going on in the news, then we always finish it off with a topic, typically about our family and our children. If you're listening to this on one of the digital platforms, please leave a comment. Please leave a review. If you're listening to it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, the show is available all these places. I'd like to thank everybody who continues to support me. Oh, if you're in the Sacramento area, we are going to have our softball game. My organization, Melanated Fathers of America, is going to have our softball game this year on Father's Day. I'll be coming with all the details here shortly. So again, family, thank everybody again for tuning into the show. I'm out.